Kits, I'm afraid to start.
Hey, welcome to Dan's Model Works, and this is the fourth installment in our Kits I'm Afraid to Start series. Now, I was not intending that there was going to be this much space between the first three parts and part four, but I have actually got quite a huge backlog of videos I want to make and projects I want to do, and this one just didn't really come up until recently. And basically, what's been going on is about 2 weeks ago, I came down with a really, really bad cold or the flu. I'm not quite sure what it is. I'm struggling to get through this without going or coughing. I'm probably going to have to do quite a bit of editing out. Um, so I've been pretty much so sick, all I've done is just go to work and come home and collapse. So a couple weeks or a couple days ago, I thought, well, you know what? Let's see if maybe I can do part four of the kits that I'm afraid to start. And if you're newer to the channel and you haven't seen the three previous episodes and kits I'm afraid to start, right around up here, I'll put a link to the playlist that takes you to the other three installments in this. But basically, kits I'm afraid to start is a little bit maybe over dramatic. It's more kits that I'm reluctant to start. It doesn't mean I don't want to build them. It means there's something that's holding me back. There's something that I'm just not quite sure how I'm going to handle or something like that. And I believe I explained in part one, which was actually the Blom Voss, I can't remember the designation, but the reconnaissance aircraft. And what it comes down to is, and I'm sure everybody who has a stash of any sort of size in this hobby is we all have kits that you're really excited about, you really want to build it, but there's something holding you back. And um, it could be it's out of your comfort zone. Maybe all you've done is build armor, and oh, now it's an airliner. How do I build an airliner? Oh, it's quite different from what you normally do. Or perhaps um, there's a technique that you've never done before that you're going to have to do, and you're kind of reluctant to get into it because of that. Or perhaps it's a project that you're going to be kit bashing. You want to, make it from one variation to another variation, and you're not quite sure how you're going to do it. Or perhaps there's some sort of a flaw in the kit. You buy the kit, you look at the parts, and you're like, oh, yeah, that doesn't look like what I thought it was going to look like, and you're not quite sure how you're going to change it or fix it. And there could be a number of other reasons. Maybe it's going to be part of a diorama, and you have three of the four parts that you need, and until you get that last ingredient, you don't really want to get into the project. So this is, one of my kits that I'm afraid to start. Well, maybe reluctant, it's a better term, but I've already started calling the series Kits I'm Afraid to Start. So obviously, this is a helicopter kit, and people who have watched the channel for quite some time or who have looked at the channel descriptor will know I got a thing for helicopter models. So a little bit about the subject here, the CH-37B Mojave, not the Mojave, although it would be cool if it was called that. The Mojave was probably one of the heaviest, well, it was the largest helicopter in the Western world when it was built. And it was built by Sikorsky, as you would imagine. And I've always considered that this was kind of a mistake of Sikorsky's. Um, and I don't mean to disparage the people who designed it. I don't mean to disparage the people who made the decisions back in the 50s. But this always struck me as being a little bit of a of a dead end. I mean, they would go on to use the transmission and a lot of the control equipment and everything like that later on to build the U.S. military's flying crane. But I think the decision to use two piston engines was they shouldn't have bothered. They should have just held off until turbo shafts were ready. And the reason I make this argument is it used Pratt & Whitney R2800s. Now, the R2800 could have a horsepower anywhere between 1,500 horsepower and 2,800 horsepower, depending on the application and which model it was. Now, the engines that are used in helicopters tend to be rated a little on the conservative side just because of reliability issues. So if, let's say, we take a horsepower rating of maybe 2,200 horsepower and say, okay, that's conservative, that means that this helicopter would have had 4,200 horsepower to work with. The problem is the average weight of an R2800 is 2,360 pounds. So that means that the power plants alone, not including the transmission, was 4,720 pounds. As for comparison, the later Sky Crane, which used two turboshaft engines, each of those engines was good for 4,500 horsepower, but each engine was only weighed 966 pounds. So basically, the later Sky Crane that had the turbofshafts, the total power plant weight was less than 2,000 pounds, and you had 9,000 horsepower. Now, yes, that came out in the 60s, you're saying. You know, that's not fair. This was a product of the 50s. The Westland Helicopter Company, back in the 50s, fitted the mechanical components of this helicopter, because that's all they bought was the rotors, the transmission, and the tail rotor. That was all they did. They just bought that from Sikorsky, and they imported it to the UK. And they put two Napier Eland turboshaft engines. Now, they were only 2,900 horsepower each, giving a total of just under 6,000 horsepower. And they were actually quite heavy. They were 1,700 pounds apiece, but that still compares to 3,400 pounds compared to the 4,700 pounds for the piston engines. So no matter what, the helicopter has to pick up the engines that it has in it. So I just always kind of thought that maybe Sikorsky should have waited until they had turboshafts available, or maybe they should have put more effort into developing domestic turboshafts. So that's my little comment there. Take it as you will. I think it's still a tremendous helicopter that did amazing things in the Vietnam War, but I almost wonder if the U.S. lost their lead in heavy helicopter technology to the Soviets because they built this with piston engines versus turbines. So now that I've bored you with the debate over engines, let's take a look at what's in this kit. This is by Special Hobby, and they're from the Czech Republic. And Special Hobby is oftentimes known for multimedia kits. They usually have some resin in there. They've oftentimes got some photo etch and things like that, which makes this kit a little surprising when we get into it. So we have the instructions, which are in booklet form, and we've got a potted history here, and then we've got some warnings, and basically don't eat the parts. And you can see if we quickly flip our way through, we've got a sprue map, and down in this corner we've got somewhere we've got the photo etch parts, and these are all the resin parts up here. And for a 1/72nd scale helicopter, there's quite a bit of detail that goes into the cockpit. So here we've got the engine cells being built. And as you can see, they've got separate parts going in for the louvers. And I'll get to those again here in a a few minutes. And then we've got the landing gear, which is actually pretty complicated. A lot of this looks like it's etched metal. And then we've got the engine pods being put in place. It's a fairly complicated model. As you can see here, they kind of shade out the engine pods so you can see what you got to work on in behind there. And then we have various different paint schemes that you can put on. In this bag, which I'm not even going to open, you can see all of the resin parts that come with this kit. This has got an awful lot of resin in it, so it definitely qualifies as mixed media. And continuing on, we have the glazing for the cockpit, and then these are the clamshell doors for the front, and they're molded in clear so that the windows can be molded in place, and then you would just basically mask them. And if you've seen the one of the earlier episodes, you know how much I hate masking, but that's not the basic reason that I'm holding off on this kit. We'll get to the fuselage in a moment. You can see we've got the rotor blades here, side door, and these parts here are for the sides of the nacelles. And this sprue here has the nacelles, and it also has some drop tanks, although I don't think they can be dropped, but they're certainly removable tanks. And then we have the decals, which look quite nice. And then we have the etched metal right there. So here we have the main fuselage sides, and they go together fairly well. There's no pins or anything like that to line everything up, but that's okay, because if you're building a kit like this, you're beyond using the pins anyway. So your canopy goes up here, and then the clamshell doors go here, and this is where the stub wings that hold the pods come out of. The funny thing is when you stick this together without any of the helicopter parts, it almost looks like it's trying to be a submarine. It has that kind of look to it. So the detail mold work on this is quite nice. Nothing to complain about there. So, but you put this next to some of the Soviet helicopters and it just looks tiny. Why am I reluctant to build this? Okay. I'm going to flash up a couple pictures of the engine pods, the nacelles of this helicopter, and then we'll be back in a moment. So as you probably noticed with the pictures that I flashed up of the engine nacelles, the areas right there are very, very hollow looking. You can look right inside. Everything is really visible. So what I had actually thought they would do is perhaps they would have supplied etched metal parts, although I would imagine in 1/72nd scale they would end up looking solid. I suppose maybe I was thinking they would have given you the etched metal parts to represent the framework, and then you could do that and then just leave the gaps, and they would have given you the machinery inside. Instead, what they give you, and it's not terrible, here are some of them. Let's get a good focus on that. So you can see if you gave that a black wash, it would certainly give you the effect of darker areas in behind. There's some more of them, and there. And then there are the remaining panels that are mostly screens. And once again, if I put the box up, you can see right there. So they certainly have tried to give you the parts to give you those screened areas, but it just seems to me that they're not going to have much depth. So let's bring it in close. You can see they are quite nice parts. So I don't know what the best solution here is. I don't know whether this can be improved, whether it's going to be just best to paint them fuselage colored and then just give them a black wash. I don't know if this is the best we can do in 1/72nd scale. I'm not berating the kit. The kit is really quite nice. It's just these portions of the engine nacelles look so open on the real thing, and I just don't know whether these parts are really going to carry the show. So there it is. That's what's holding me back on this particular project. Maybe I should just say screw it and just build it, use the kit parts for the screens, and put a wash on it and be done with it. I just wonder if I could do something more creative, like recreate some of these internal parts. But then you've got the problem of how do you represent this framing, which I suppose you could do using strip styrene. But then you still don't have anything representing the mesh. I don't know, some sort of pantyhose material or something like that. I don't know what the answer is. Because quite frankly, in 1/72nd scale, from the distance we're looking at it, any of this mesh would basically be invisible anyway. So we start getting into problems of scale materials and things. I don't know. I'm going to have to think some more on this one. Actually, to tell you the truth, the parts they give you actually are a little bit better than what I remember when I first got the kit. I think I was just disappointed that they weren't etch brass parts. They didn't really take a good look at the kit parts. But I have to say, after looking at more pictures of the real helicopters and seeing how open this area is, I'm still a conundrum. Just build it and say, oh, that's good enough, or should I try to do the detail inside? So, it's my own pickiness. That's the problem. So, thanks for watching, and until next time, just keep on modeling, and hopefully I will be feeling well enough to start working on that truck again, the Dodge Wrecker.